Konnichiwa minasan. O genki desu ka? Welcome to my channel. Let's learn Japanese with Eric. If you would like to learn Japanese for work, travel, or simply personal interest, please subscribe to my channel and watch the videos in chronological order. All lessons are written in both English and Japanese, so if you read Japanese, you can follow along reading the Hiragana alphabet. If you haven't learned the Hiragana yet, you can learn them all in one afternoon by going through lessons 1, 2, and 3. Otherwise, you're perfectly fine following along using the English transliteration. So let's begin. Hajimemashou. First, let me give you a perspective of where you are now in your journey of learning Japanese. In lessons 1, 2, and 3, you learned the Hiragana alphabet. Next, you learned pronouns in lessons 5 and 6. You learned how to express likes and dislikes in lesson 7, and how to express ability in lesson 8. You learned how to count and use counters in lessons 9 and 10. You learned about time expressions in lessons 11 and 12. Adjectives in lessons 15, 16, and 17. And how to make adverbs from adjectives and onomatopoeic adverbs in lesson 18. You learned about verbs of existence, imasu and arimasu, in lesson 21. And all about Japanese particles in lessons 22, 23, and 24. Now, what's left for you to learn are the verbs, which is the biggest pillar that you need in learning the Japanese language. In this lesson, I will give you an overview of Japanese verbs. We will examine how Japanese verbs are structured, looking at levels of politeness, the basic tenses, and the major verb categories. Japanese has about 3 levels of politeness. The first is the plain style, which is used when speaking with family members, close friends, work subordinates, and people younger than you, and children. This is the style that Japanese people learn first as they grow up within their families. The next style is formal, or the polite speech. Formal speech is characterized by the use of mas verb endings. It is used when speaking to superiors, work colleagues, and strangers. Japanese people start learning this style as they go to school and out into society. The third style is the honorifics and humble speech that people use when speaking to VIPs, such as those of higher social stature, royalty, customers, or to those giving you a job interview. We will study the plain and formal style simultaneously in the next few lessons and look at honorifics in advanced lessons. Japanese has only 2 tenses, non-past and the past tense. The non-past tense covers both the present and future tenses. The future tense is distinguished from the present tense by using a future time expression, such as tomorrow or next week. In the next few lessons, we will learn 10 basic verb conjugations. This includes both the plain forms and formal forms, each containing non-past and past tenses, in the affirmative and negative. So right there, you learn 8 conjugations. Then we add the te form and the conjunctive form for a total of 10 basic verb conjugations. You will learn to do this for each verb you learn. The plain forms, te form, and conjunctive form are also jump-off points to more sophisticated verb conjugations. Japanese verbs are either regular or irregular, depending on how the dictionary form of the verb conjugates. The dictionary form is what you would find in the dictionary. Regular verbs follow a very regular pattern of rules when conjugated, while irregular verbs either do not have a pattern or they only partially follow a pattern. Regular verbs are further divided into 2 kinds. You have the category 1 verbs, which I call ru-dropping verbs, and the category 2 verbs that I call the last hiragana changing verbs. Category 3 verbs are irregular verbs. The good news is that there are only 5 irregular verbs that are frequently used and that you'd need to know. Now compare that to English, French, or Spanish, where you have lots of irregular verbs, so you have a pretty good deal in Japanese. As we mentioned earlier, Category 1 verbs are regular verbs. The dictionary form of the verb ends in the hiragana ru, which you drop when you conjugate the verb into the basic 10. They are the easiest verbs to conjugate, so we learn them first. Category 2 verbs are also regular verbs. There are 9 kinds depending on the hiragana ending of their dictionary forms. When conjugated into the basic 10, the last hiragana is not dropped, but changes to something else in a very predictable pattern. They're also not difficult to conjugate, once you know the rules. Here are the 9 kinds of endings for the Category 2 verbs. They're grouped according to the similarity of rules in verb conjugation. You have ku and gu, then su, then bu, mu, and nu, and ru, tsu, and u. Note that for this category, we also have verbs ending in ru. So how do you know if a ru ending verb is Category 1 or Category 2? There's no fast way to know except to memorize which ones are Category 1 and which ones are Category 2. Category 2 verbs are also called U-type verbs by conventional textbooks. Irregular verbs do not follow a pattern when they conjugate into the basic 10, or if they follow a pattern, 1 or 2 conjugations in the basic 10 do not. And there are only 5 of them that are frequently used. Here are the 5 irregular verbs that you need to know how to conjugate. You've already encountered all these verbs in our past lessons, except back then they were conjugated in their formal forms. But here, I introduce them to you in their dictionary forms. The first is suru, which means to do. You've encountered this as shimasu. Next is iku, which means to go. You met this verb before as ikimasu. Next is aru, which means to exist, for inanimate things. You learn this as the verb arimasu. Next is kuru, which means to come. You met this verb before as kimasu. And da, which is the verb to be. This is the very first verb you learned as the verb des. To summarize this lesson, you learned that there are 3 major verb categories: ru-dropping verbs, last hiragana-changing verbs, or also known as the u-type verbs, and irregular verbs. There are 3 levels of politeness: the plain style, which is not polite and used with family and close friends; the formal style, which is polite and used in business and work and with strangers; and the honorific humble speech used when speaking with superiors, customers, people of higher social stature, and when applying for work. Japanese has only 2 tenses: non-past, which includes both present and future, and the past tense. In the next few lessons on verb conjugation, you will learn to conjugate verbs in the 10 basic ways. The formal forms gets you started talking right away in the formal style, which gives a great impression, while the plain forms, the te form, and the conjunctive form lay the foundation for you to learn more advanced verb conjugations. So I'll see you in the next lesson on Category 1 verbs, ru-dropping verbs. If you're serious about becoming fluent in Japanese, it's important to practice daily, learn grammar, and build up vocabulary. My whole course is designed to give you a strong basic foundation in the Japanese language that you can build solidly on. So please click like, share, or subscribe, and watch the next video in the series. 日本語の勉強に頑張ってください。じゃあ、またね。